welcome back to another episode of Doing It for Retention. And this is a special one, actually. This is episode number 10 in the series, and I thought special number, special individual. So I brought two people on who don't really need an introduction, to be honest. I'd say they are powerhouses in the world of customer success. I see Dave kind of shrugging it off, and just business growth in general. So I'll kick off. First, we've got David Jackson here. Great to see you, Dave.
Thanks for the invitation, Luke.
Pleasure. How's things in your world?
Things are very well at the moment. Yeah, really, really pleased with it, how everything's going.
Awesome. And we're joined by Dhaliwal.
Hey, Luke. Good to see you again. I'm wondering why me and Dave had to wait 9 episodes to get on when we went on the first one, but we'll get into that afterwards.
It's all about the build-up.
I'm just
about the build-up. I think it was more because it was hard to pin you down, actually.
Yeah, make it worse for yourself. Okay. No, but seriously, thank you for inviting us on. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolute pleasure. And there's 1,000,001 topics at the moment within the world of customer success, SaaS scale-ups. And, one that I would love to kind of dive into is value as a high level, but value within customer success. And I'll kind of expand on that. But before we do that, I've just put a poll out. So selfishly, I just want to ask your individual opinions on this. Complete segue. When you receive a CV, how many pages to you is optimum?
2.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cool. And would you expand on that? What's wrong with 3-4 pages?
Because if you can't express what you are very succinctly, you probably don't really know what you are. And you probably not put yourself in the shoes of the hirer and figure out what's important to her or him. And that's what you focus on.
Yeah, I think that the latter point's the key one there is putting yourself in the shoes of the screener or the hiring manager. They want to disproportionately over-index on what you're doing right now and what you may have done before that. And then the stuff previously gets less and less important. And so the golden rule of CVs I was always taught was the more space you give something, the more important you're saying it is. And if your very first job straight out of uni is taking up half a page, that's a problem.
Yeah, which you see a lot. And we won't dive into it, but I think just to add to that, like Dave said, it's quickly ascertaining what your value is within the CV and expressing that and showing that. And many times we've received CVs and they are like a job spec, a badly written job spec of responsibilities. And Rav, you put some great stuff out there many times around being able to, it's kind of like the so what statement. So how do you kind of back up what you're doing?
Yeah, common thing I see a lot of CVs. The common things that I see is no achievements on the CV. It's just like I just tell you what I did. I didn't tell you what I actually achieved, which is a kind of interesting segue into our conversation on value, I think. Yeah. And then the other one is anyone who puts Microsoft Office as a skill, I just immediately throw that in the bin. Yeah, that's not a skill. That's just software.
Yeah.
Skilled in word.
I think the reason that you've got to be brief is succinct clarity in itself is a skill that's becoming more and more important. And I love quotes, and there's a great quote from the great Winston Churchill, who once said at the end of a 2-page letter, "I'm sorry, this is a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." Yeah. What he meant by that is I need to be able to get at the essence of what I'm saying quickly and succinctly and with clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Brevity, business superpower.
But I think that's down to the way in which we consume content now in general. We have this kind of immediate desire to get the information, and it's kind of inbuilt in us anyway as humans, right? Path of least resistance. But we are creating machines now that give us what we need very, very quickly. And this could go into a massive segue, so I won't do it. It does jump into AI, but let's kind of move on and let's talk about value and customer success. And it's a big topic, but I really want to get into the detail of what you guys really think about when you hear the two in the same sentence. And I guess what's sometimes missing as well. So I guess starting with you, Dave, when you think about value and CS, what does that actually mean to you at a high level?
I'm not a fan of the word value. I recognise it, and I recognise that everybody uses it. But part of the problem is it's very vague, and it gets bandied around as customer value or value, and it just doesn't get down to specificity. So it's back to concise and clarity. So for me, value to the customer very much means how do you deliver measurable results for the key roles in your chosen customers. So it's three parts. Measurable results. In other words, we can put some sort of assessment on whether we've achieved it or are on track to achieve it. Key roles. It's not the same for everybody in the organization that you're selling to or serving. And it's not everybody, it is your chosen customers.
Right. Awesome. And over to you, Rav. What does it mean to you?
I think I've just got a different way of expressing pretty much what David just said, which is, and I'm just talking in this context of software now and software companies, not even CS. People buy software because they're looking for one of three things, or more, one of these three things. They either want to increase their revenue, they want to reduce their cost, or they want to minimize their risk, right? It's one or more of those. So that's really value. And today's point is, our goal is to make sure we have done all the necessary things to deliver on the value they were looking for. And then the second part of what Dave was saying is, value differs by stakeholder. And I think this is a very common problem that CS teams fall into, is because they think value is what the stakeholder that I'm working with is looking for. That's important for sure, but there's other people in that buying chain that you may never have met that have, may not care about the end user's value. They've got different priorities. And so it's not just the value for the people I'm talking to, it's value for all the stakeholders involved in the decision to purchase and renew and expand. Yeah. So I think that's, Dave, pretty much what you were saying, is just articulated slightly.
And I don't disagree with any of that, Rav. And the thing about understanding the different stakeholders, or as I call them, key roles, is because you have to understand those different players and their needs. And there probably in any sale, there may be, research suggests now there could be anything between 8 and 12 in a buying committee, a buying group.
Enterprise,
it's crazy. But they're probably only filling 3 or 4 roles that really matter to you. So it's not as bad as it sounds. And the other thing is, even if they're not part of that decision-making team, they're part of maybe a user, and as Rav says, the decision maker may not be too concerned. Getting that user on board by understanding what they're trying to achieve and helping them achieve that builds that internal advocacy that will become essential for, particularly when you get down to renewals, expansion and word of mouth.
Yeah, so I think just building on that, what Dave's saying there, Luke, I think one of the most useful frameworks that's used in sales, it would be 100% useful in CS, is something called the Miller-Heiman model. And the Miller-Heiman model is where you categorize stakeholders in a buying process by specific roles. And it's broadly, there's 4 personas, right? There's what they call the user buyer, right? So this is the person who's going to use the solution every day, most likely in their job. And the value that person's looking for is, does this make my job easier? That's literally all the value that they're looking for. Yeah. So they tend to be over-indexed on feature function because that's all they care about. This is going to make my life easier. And does it break anything that I'm doing right now, right? And then you've got technical buyers, right? So this is, probably people CS never interface with: procurement, legal, infosec, all these, whose entire job is just to say, is it going to be too risky for us to either use a solution or continue with it, right? And then you've got champions, and I think this is where often CS teams get really unstuck, because they think, I'm talking to Luke. Luke loves us. He comes to every call. He does reference calls with us. He's going to be on stage. He's a champion. Well, there's champion in the Miller-Heiman model is someone who, they advocates for you, but they've actually got influence and authority with people who hold the budget. They can actually walk you through the procurement or the commercial side of your relationship. And then finally, the economic buyer, right? The economic buyer, the person who owns the budget, they have strategic priorities for the business. They may not care what the champions typically care about. OKRs, KPIs, their targets. They may not care about the champions' targets. They may not care about the users. They might. But they have strategic priorities and commercial drivers, which are increase revenue, reduce cost, minimize risk. And so when I think of value, I'm thinking about that pyramid, right? That pyramid of people, those stakeholders in it, what they typically care about. And as a CS leader, what I was thinking about is, what level are we stuck at here? We're only talking to user buyers. We understand their value, but we're exposed now, because we don't understand, we don't have a good champion, and we don't understand, 3 levels above that's opaque what they care about.
I think what we've come to understand though is you have all of these influencers in the kind of buying chain, and really, it's the CFO that there's the blocker at the end of the process. Because even in recruitment,
who really cares about the commercial drivers?
Exactly.
Actually, only cares about the commercial drivers.
But like you said, you do need to have all of these other individuals on board because they're almost championing the individual message.
They could block it.
Yeah.
The technical buyer could block it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think value is always simply measurable? Because you talked about different teams and kind of, I guess, what they're deeming as valuable. Do you think it's always measurable?
I think if it's not measurable in a quantitative sense, it has to be measurable in an accessible sense, if that makes sense. You have to be able to put some sort of stake in the ground and says, this is where we are now, and at points track towards where we're getting that better. And that could be something as simple as, what's the perception? Are we getting better? Does it feel easier? Whatever that might be. But I think if you can't make an assessment as to whether you're heading in the right direction, then I think there's a big challenge there.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why, I think there's two major reasons, Luke, why I feel like people sometimes struggle on this question of, quantifying. One is a lot of customers don't measure anything, right? They just do stuff and they know that this stuff was hard and this stuff got easier. So part of what we need to do both from a sales and success perspective is benchmark where they are now and agree, well, these are the things we're going to benchmark, right? And whether that, to Dave's point, whether quantifying how difficult it is, we'll just pick a scale, 1 to 10, 10 being impossible, 1 being easy. We'll find some way to quantify it. We've got a benchmark. And related to that is a lot of these problems stem from the sales cycle where we're not really doing deep enough discovery on the current state. And then we're not able to build a case for current state versus post-purchase state. And that's because oftentimes it's possible to actually sell without having to do that, but that will then just come back and bite you 12 months later. So,
and it's also a great opportunity for software organizations that are selling. And that is, as Ralph said, a lot of people don't know what they should be measuring. So if we're ahead of the curve as a supplier and say, no, you should be measuring this, 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 and this in this way, and given where you are and given the characteristics you've told us, this is your level of maturity, then you should be performing at this level and we should be aiming to get you to this level.
Your peers, our existing customers who are very successful, they're performing at this level. The other thing is related to that, Dave, as well, and I see this very commonly with a lot of the CROs and sales leaders that I work with, is sometimes they do not do a good enough job of educating their customer on the scale of the problem the customer actually has.
Yeah.
The customer knows they have a problem, right? And they know they've been tasked to solve that problem. But sometimes they have no idea how much of a problem it is, right? A good salesperson is going to be able to talk to you and do a lot of discovery and go, all right, so based on what you've told me, Luke, sounds like 30% of your engineering team's week is spent on fixing bugs. Does that sound about right? And they'll stop and go, I knew it was a lot, but I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think, again, it goes back to quantifying earlier, doing good discovery earlier.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have that information as a CS person, you do need to retrospectively go baseline it. Right?
And the key thing that's important here is whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's success, or whether it's product, all of those go-to-market teams have got to be operating off the same understanding of what the measurable results that matter for key roles in our chosen customers are. Because as soon as you get a difference in that, you get a dysfunctional organization, you get a bad sales process, you get a higher likelihood of churn. So building this together as one view from an organization that says this is what value, this is what measurable results means to us and our chosen customers, that has to be universally applied across the whole go-to-market team.
And I think, Dave, it's on a really key point there. That's often where companies get into a mess because, and you see that reflected in the fact that all of these go-to-market teams, which should be operating on the same definition of value, are all incentivized completely differently.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes incentivized in opposition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're optimizing for their part of the world, which is, well, our companies asked me to do this because they've measured me on this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, let's take a hypothetical example. Let's say we sell a product and the more of the customer that adopts it, the more value that they get and therefore the more revenue we get. Right, let's look at it that way. Well, if I don't make that adoption number part of everyone in go-to-market's compensation,
Yeah.
they're not going to care about it, right? They're going to start doing things which I have seen of selling 3,000 licenses to a company with only 1,000 employees because the company optimized me on license revenue. I didn't care about the adoption problem. That was way further. So I just did what the company asked me to do. By the way, I've seen that happen, right? So that's the problem. You'll see that lack of alignment reflected in not having that common value and a common measure to reflect it.
One caveat to that, Rav, and that is adoption is a very important thing, provided what the customer, the user, the different stakeholders are adopting has an impact on the results that matter to them.
100%. I'm working on the assumption that this particular solution increases in value the more people adopt it.
Yeah.
And you raise another very good, interesting point there, Dave, which is sometimes teams, especially in CS, are over-indexed on things like onboarding and adoption.
Yeah.
And they are normally a precursor to the customer getting the value that you delivered, but not always.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that you've got to think about is what are the activities we should be doing that help them see the increase in revenue, the reduction in cost, the minimization of risk. Yeah.
I've formed a group with a few other people, Peter Lyon, Greg Danes, Andy Barton, a few others, called the Customer-Led Growth Forum. And one of the things we've just released is this idea of product results fit matrix. What's the relationship between the results that your customers are trying to achieve, the different key roles are trying to achieve, and the features and enablement that you provide? And understanding that fit, if you really understand that, you shift, for example, your onboarding process. Your onboarding process then becomes, it says, okay, what's the first result milestone that we're going to set? Right, you need to master these particular, you need to adopt these particular features, and you need to consume this particular set of content. So understanding the relationship between what the product does and how it enables results is a key piece in making, and again, that's part of selling. You say this matters, well, we've got this capability that helps you enable that. It's part of onboarding, and to my mind, it should also be built on into the product.
Yeah, and I think what you're starting to see now, and again, I don't want to take the conversation off in this direction because there's too many boring podcasts about AI and the future. You are actually seeing many, many more, because this, what you're describing, Dave, is essentially a data problem, right? This is where machine learning and AI is adding a lot of impact where people are using it correctly, because it's able to say, or it's able to work out for you, these are the correlative effects. When customers do this, this is what happens. If customers don't do this, this is what happens. You should make an intervention. And so I think when people are thinking about AI and tooling in the future, right now, especially in CS, they're indexed on workflow. How can I get this to write my emails or remind me to do something? Yeah. What you really want to be indexed on is, how do I get analysis of huge swathes of data to tell me what's most likely to happen in situation X or situation Y? Yeah. Because I want to make an intervention.
So I'm working with a company at the moment, and we are actually using AI for exactly that. We are building a custom LLM which helps marketing, sales, product and CS understand this relationship. And literally, it is a chatbot. You can say to it, I'm talking to this role in this company, in this industry, we're at this stage, what product and enabling features and enabling capabilities should I be focused on?
Mm.
Awesome. And Rav, something you kind of touched on actually, and it might be a slight segue, but the sales team being incentivized to sell X number of licenses, the CS team being incentivized, slightly differently. So, is there kind of an ideal model? And Dave, you posted something about this a while back around compensation schemes for customer success, for sales. Do you think a lot of businesses have the wrong structure to incentivize behavior? Is there a better 100%.
Way? Yeah. Basically, we have not particularly iterated on the company structure, especially in go-to-market, for 30 years, right? We basically organize, incentivize, and structure our go-to-market motion the same way we did back in the on-premises era over 30 years ago. In the on-premises era, I'm making a capital expenditure. There's only like 3 or 4 options for me to buy for this solution. And I'm going to have to sink a lot of capital costs to get it up and running. So it's going to take me 2 years to get this up and running. So as a vendor, I'm less likely to be concerned about, you seeing any value, because there's this whole massive lag, right? In just and customers were like, they're not going to put their hand up after a couple of months ago. I think we made a bad call after spending tens of millions of dollars on data and infrastructure. So yeah, the company structure is a problem, and you want to unpick that even further. That goes back to the industrial era, right? Because the industrial era was about taking skilled jobs, breaking them into hundreds of small unskilled jobs to maximize efficiency, and building this org chart to manage it all. And the person before did not have to care or know about what was happening after or before them, right? So we still operate very much in that way, but we keep iterating on the distribution model, the license model, the revenue model. We haven't actually distributed on the company structure and the incentive model. I mean, the simplest thing you can do is to say, everybody has some overlapping targets. 100% of my success is only achievable if Luke is successful and if Dave is successful, right? And make that friction just enough that I care about making sure Luke and Dave are successful.
I think Rav's onto something which is really, really key, and where I agree with him entirely, that the thinking has not moved on at all. And that is in the broad area of what I would call organisation design. Now, I think part of the problem is that a lot of people, particularly in the West, confuse organisation design and organisation structure. Organisation structure is only one small part of organisation design, and I would argue it's probably the least important part. Because you can make any structure work if you've got lots of other things right. So you've got to get the metrics right, you've got to get the culture right, you've got to get the collaborative frameworks right. And we don't. We focus almost entirely on structure. There's a great book that I think he was one of the first 12 employees at Salesforce, a guy called Chen Zhou, who then went on to form a company called Zuora. Wrote a book called Subscribed, and it's about the subscription economy. And he says in there, in talking about CEOs and how they meet new challenges, and I paraphrase, but he basically said, CEOs tend to meet each new challenge by creating a new stovepipe. And that's exactly what we've done with CS. We've not thought about what it really means.
That's 100% Dave what Salesforce did with CS, right?
Yeah.
They took the Oracle model, realized that was broken.
Yeah.
Let's add a stovepipe at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a big, big problem, because if you really understand organization design, then metrics become key. I think Rav said it already. Competing metrics are one of the biggest challenges because they're built in stovepipes.
Yeah.
Whereas what it really takes to deliver successful customers requires the whole in fact, it requires the whole company in a way, but particularly the whole go-to-market team. So you have to have some overarching metric which focuses on the outcome for the customer as well as the outcome for the company.
So Dave hits on another really interesting thing here, because another thing that you see is when some people kind of unconsciously, like CEOs or founders, go, it's not working. And it's not working. What's the problem? I've added the stovepipe. The stovepipe's not working either.
Yeah.
What they then decide to do is to say, I know how to figure this out. I'll give the CS team responsibility for implementation, adoption, onboarding, configuration, renewal, and upsell. Because that's how I will solve that problem, right? Is I will just give them everything so it lives in the one stovepipe. And unless you have an incredibly simple consumer style offering, that's not going to work either.
There's a very significant difference between changing reporting lines and changing what work is done and how it's done. We focus on changing reporting lines much more than how work is done and what work is done.
Yeah, I've seen that many times. You've got a CS team that's not particularly commercial. Right, they're going to plug into the CRO now.
So going back to your world and your opening question about CVs, right? This all entirely relates to people. So one of the biggest problems I see as an investor is when we bring in a CRO or a CFO or a chief customer officer, whatever it is, this person ultimately failed because they did not spend any time learning the context of this business, its customers, the value that we deliver, the value our prospects are looking for. They didn't bother to learn any of it. They just went, well, this is my stovepipe, and this is how I ran the stovepipe in my last company or the company before.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Now, some people know they're doing that because they're like, I'm only here for 18 months. I don't really care what happens beyond that. Right? But that is a problem. All of the most successful leaders and execs I've seen are, when you ask them a question, they go, I don't know yet, but this is what I'm going to do to figure that out. And they're the people who are like, I'm going to take the time to understand the context, especially around the context of the value our customers are looking for, or our prospects are looking for, and what's the best way of delivering that value, right? This is why I meet a lot of teams where they define value as, well, we did 65 QBRs this quarter, so we're doing our job. And I'm like, and the ones that got cancelled, how many customers complained? Well, none of them complained. Yeah, because it's completely non-valuable. It does not relate to the value that they are looking for. Yeah.
I saw Dave wince when you say QBRs. Then I think it's interesting.
It takes me back to a conversation I had with the company I was coaching, and one of the first conversations I was involved with is about redesigning the QBR. And I let this conversation go for half an hour or so, and then asked the question: how many customers have asked for a QBR?
I'll take it a step further. When I'm in a board and head of customer comes in and runs us through all their QBR, EBR numbers, I'm just thinking, when can we replace this person?
Yeah.
It's interesting because what you mentioned, Rav, is that like great leaders, they still have a framework for how they operate, but instead of having this is my delivery framework, which worked here, they almost have a discovery framework to understand.
That's a great way of thinking about it. Yeah,
what's going to work.
Yeah. What 50% of my framework will likely be the same, but I've got to figure out the 50 or 60 that's different.
Yeah, this is what we need to understand. Basically, these are the key metrics.
There is a very, very important difference between a framework and a playbook, and I think people miss that. A playbook says, do this, do this, do this, do this. A framework says, this is how you think about this problem. Now populate the appropriate content in context of your organization and your customers. They're very, very different things. I'm a great fan of frameworks. I'm a great unbeliever, if that's the right word, of playbooks.
And I think, again, what we're really getting to is a lot of these things don't have a common definition, or people don't understand what the definition is. So we started this conversation talking about value, right? It's the same framework. I can tell you, really experienced people on board sometimes get confused between strategy and tactics, right? They go, well, that's a great strategy for that. And I'm like, that's actually a tactic, right? These things matter.
Yeah.
They absolutely matter. So if we go back to value, if the CS team thinks, well, my value is I get a good CSAT, right? That's the value I'm here to drive. I'm here to make happy customers, right? If the sales team's thinking, well, the value I'm here to drive is hitting or exceeding my quota for me and the company every month. If marketing is like, my value is just to increase top of funnel, it doesn't matter what the quality of that funnel is, right? Those are the problems, really. And that comes from a lack of shared definition. Right?
Sure.
That's a lack of company vision, right? That's not having a leader that kind of sews everything together to be like, this
because
is
the leader may not have a discovery framework, right?
Yeah.
They may just have a delivery framework.
Yeah.
I was a CEO for 15 years of a startup, company that I co-founded. And I think over those 15 years or so, one of the things I learned, probably too late, was that one of my biggest jobs or roles was that of chief organization designer. And in its truest sense. So it was about trying to create a vision, trying to create a culture, trying to live what we wanted other people to be, and trying to put in place what I call the connective tissue, the frameworks, which run across teams and departments, rather than, and metrics was another piece of that.
Yeah. Alignment. That's the job.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about alignment, and I've just been talking about this recently, alignment has to have a basis. It's no good saying let's make sure all the teams are aligned. So what you end up with is these crazy conversations where marketing has a meeting with sales about the quality and quantity of leads, and sales has a meeting with CS about onboarding and passing on customers and things like that. And we all talk about these handoffs. That's not alignment. Alignment is purposefully designing that flow from the outside in that works by design. Does it always work perfectly? No. But it's designed to take out those blockages. It's designed to minimize or purposefully shape what those handoffs like.
And I would say to that point, Dave, is from the outside in, the point outside you want to start from is what's the value we're supposed to deliver? What's the value this customer's looking for? Why did they buy us in the first place? Let's work our way backwards.
Yeah, and I think the key for any CEO, any leadership team, is to figure out what are those measurable results, who are the key roles we need to deliver those to, in our chosen, and who are our chosen customers. So once you understand that, and I do a lot of work with companies in building what we call results library. These are the results that matters to key roles. This is how we define them. This is how they are measured. These are data points that we use to construct those metrics and results. And these are the different levels of maturity. And by the way, you go on then and say, well, this is how we build that into our marketing messages, our sales messages, our product, our enablement processes, customer enablement processes. And that actually is the red thread. That is in my mind, that is the basis of alignment. It's purposeful alignment. It's alignment with an intent, and that intent is how do we deliver measurable result to our chosen customers in a way that drives profitable revenue for my company. So and that's why we started the Customer-Led Growth Forum, to share that thinking, share the frameworks around that.
We'll link this below.
Yeah, I think all of this, just stepping back and listening to Dave and just reflecting on the conversation we're having, I think all of this is basically boils down to a problem of pattern matching. We're just always looking for patterns to try and match, right? Or is a pattern I'm familiar with? Let's just keep following this pattern. It's safe, it's predictable, it's understandable. I will not get fired for this pattern. And that goes all the way from the board to the investors, to the CEO, to the functional heads, to the individual contributors. Everybody's looking for a pattern, and they're sticking with patterns that are comfortable or understandable, right? And I think that is a broader business culture problem. Yeah, I think it really boils down to that. I'm not going to have to do too much deep discovery here. I've got a pattern of sales that I can follow that I know works. Yeah. And that will help me in my stovepipe achieve what it is that I've been asked to achieve. No one is asking me to think about that broader because no one above me, they've got a different pattern that they're thinking about, and so on and so forth. So I think this is part of just a broader problem of why it's hard for... I think CS feels it more because if you look at that go-to-market production line, they're right at the end of it, right? So everything that comes before, from engineering, product, marketing, sales, etc., it gets manifested right at the end of that production line. So I tried to explain a few years ago to my father-in-law what it is that I was doing for work. And he's a car exec. He's a retired car exec, very senior car exec. So I said, look, Dad, imagine I'm in the showroom. All right, that's what I'm doing. And so what I do in the showroom is I deliver Luke his car, but I've been told I've got to deliver it to him on time. But the problem with our car is it's very different from every other car that Luke's driven. So I have to teach him how to drive it as well as delivering it to him on time. But while I'm teaching him to drive it, I've actually got to sort out all the defects that happen back in the factory, like the dents that we delivered the car with, and the fact that it's got the wrong infotainment system and it's the wrong color. And then while I'm doing that, I've got to try and convince him to upgrade to a rear camera and leather seats. And then I've got to get him to come back next year and buy another car. Right? And that's fundamentally the problem of being stuck at the end of the go-to-market. I can't focus on the value that this customer was looking for. This customer's like, well, I bought this car because I've got 4 kids and I've got to do the school run and sports trips and I've got to get my golf clubs in there. I didn't get anywhere near that. I was just sorting out all this other nonsense because I was at the end of the production line.
Are there any companies that, to you guys, stand out as they're nailing it or they're close here with what they've set up?
I think from the outside, Luke, it's very hard to tell because if a company has extraordinarily strong product market fit, that hides a lot of these problems.
Sure.
Yeah. From the outside, it's tough to figure that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, I know some companies that I've worked with that I'll not name because that's unfair, that are certainly, one is they are very interested in doing this, and the second is they're making big strides in doing that. So I've worked with one company recently. We've built the results library. We've built what we call a two-column dashboard at the exec level. Column 1 are the traditional SaaS metrics, and column 2 is customer results. And that it's not all in place yet. So there are companies doing it, and I just think, I think probably some of the startup companies are going to have a better chance of doing this because they don't have a legacy. One of my favourite
yeah.
sayings is always, the biggest challenge is often not technology, the biggest challenge is legacy mindsets.
I think also, Dave, that the sort of new startup companies will look very, very, very different
Yeah.
by virtue of the fact that they're not selling products to help people get their work done. They're selling actually the service that does the work, right? So it's that I think is what will probably fundamentally lead to some of these changes.
Yeah.
Is actually we are not selling Luke an ATS system to help him manage his candidates. We're just managing the candidates for Luke. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that will drive quite a big difference in some of this thinking. I think.
If you're a CSM at the moment, obviously hearing what you guys are talking about, it sits at a few notches above, I would say, and sometimes your role is relatively, determined. Well, most of the time it's determined by the business you work for, and in regards to what they deem as valuable within the position. But if you're a CSM, what could you do to expand your role when thinking, if you're very customer metrics focused right now? Obviously there is the other side, which is the business metrics, which really is what drives revenue for the company you work for. So it's a broad question, but I guess a lot of CSMs would listen to this and think, like, where do I even start to expand my skill set here?
Well, I wrote an article, I think about a year and a half ago, called "The Opportunities for Customer Success," which I touched
Great
on some of
article.
it, and I think a lot of that was really just about understand how you sell, understand why people buy, understand this question of value in terms of how do I quantify it, change the way that you speak about what you do, get connected to the pipeline. It's basically, you're sort of seeing a trend, I think, of the AM and CSM role almost starting to merge a little bit into a single thing. It's getting prepared for that, right? And just understanding more about the business reasons people buy, how does our business sell, what value people are looking for, how do we demonstrate that value, how do I do good discovery, all of that stuff. I'm not saying that's the whole answer, but that's where I would start on this journey, I think, is rather than, oh, well, let me teach you how to do this feature function combination. That's important, but that is increasingly going to get automated by the solutions themselves.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a few things that any individual can do at any level. So I think one is understand how your business works, how it makes money, what its challenges are, how it's addressing those, how the finances work particularly. So that's one. Two, do the same for your customers. Understand in great detail your customers. I've always said that I think a really deep understanding of customers, if you understand your customers better than your competition, you have a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So that's two. And both of those come back to an underlying trait, which is curiosity. And then the other thing is, so curiosity to me is nothing other than asking dumb questions all the time. And then taking that on board and saying, how does that change what I need to be thinking about and need to be perceiving things?
Which is a great trait of sales professionals as well. There's a lot of overlap
Yeah,
between the two, right?
Overlap.
Yeah.
I think sales and CS people both need to understand what pains are the customers looking to solve.
Yeah.
What's the impact of those pains? How are they dealing with them right now?
Yeah.
What objections and blockers are typically in the way? What's the competitive alternatives? Who's involved in this, both in purchasing and in actually deciding to keep using this, the thing, and and what is their buying process, right? Understanding all of that will really help you understand how your own company works, or doesn't.
There's one other trait I think which is universal and becoming more and more and more important, and that's what's called first principles thinking. Now that sounds grand, but effectively all it means is going back and saying, what's the basic need here? What's the fundamental underlying need? Why do we do it the way that we do it? Why do we do it at all? And it's just asking some really, really fundamental and basic questions which drive you back to what's the real purpose? What's the purpose of our business? What's the purpose of this role? What's the purpose of what we're trying to do with customers? And I think developing that, I've always said I've made a career out of asking two questions. Why do we do that? And if the answer is, well, we need to do it and it's a sensible answer, then the second question is, why do we do it the way that we currently do it?
Yeah. The wrong answer is, because we've always done it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Instant
On
going back to
premise.
about QBRs. Everything Dave just said is entirely applicable to first principle thinking about the QBR.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, the it may be because we've always done it that way, but it's surprising how often that is a common answer.
Again, it's a pattern. I'll just follow the pattern that I'm familiar with.
It's another example of what I call legacy mindsets.
Yeah.
Do you know something I've witnessed a lot more of lately is that companies desire when hiring CS. There seems to be not totally two camps, but we're seeing domain experience now. That's kind of front and center, or this commercial understanding and business language capability, and they're kind of two camps. You can overlap, but there does seem to be a separation between the kind of hiring models businesses have.
Yeah, that's funny. Look, I have this conversation maybe, or some version of this conversation maybe 3 or 4 times a week with different CEOs. It all boils down to what does it take to realize the value that the customer is looking for. In, I would say, 8 out of 10 cases, that requires someone with commercial nous and someone with product use case domain nous. But you can't generally find that in one person if the domain knowledge is very specific or deeply technical. And I think this question just keeps coming up. It just keeps coming up, and it sometimes surprises me. It keeps coming up. So I'm not surprised you're seeing that pattern.
Yeah.
The question I would have is, well, if we're going on the more commercial side, what's your product and solution? What domain or technical knowledge, if any, is required to drive that value? And if we're going more on the domain technical side, I'd be asking what commercial skills are required in order to secure a revenue and grow it. And if the goal is I just want one person to do both, and I have some, even moderately complex enterprise software, well, good luck to you. It's probably not going to work.
It's tough, but we have clients who are, we do a lot of work, not by design, but within the dental technology space. So they will require someone that has that domain expertise. They may have worked in a practice before. They may have been a former dentist.
Wow.
But they have to have customer success. And I guess from our perspective, not a plug, we have the ability to go and seek out those individuals. And actually sometimes having a really narrow brief makes our life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because it's less ambiguous than what you see on a
Smaller
lot
target
of
to
job
hit, but I can focus on it, yeah.
Exactly. As long as they have the right proposition. And the point you mentioned about the software side, the complexity, we always ask that question. It's really understanding, and it goes back to what you said. The question we ask is, what problem are you actually looking to solve here? Like, what is the gap? And I think a lot of businesses, they don't actually ask that question. They just say, right, we've got more customers, we need to hire a CSM, and our ideal profile looks like this. Let's go and hire a CSM, without diving into the granular detail of actually forget about the job title and the generic job spec that you put out. What's the actual issue here? What's the problem? What's the challenge? And the role might look like something completely different.
Or it might be 2 roles.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is an area where if you'd asked me 18 months ago, I would have come down relatively strongly on the domain expertise side. I'm starting to question that now because, excuse me, that domain knowledge, I think, is an area that will increasingly be fulfilled by AI. You'll be able to ask AI all the detailed questions about the technicalities of something and get a pretty decent answer, if you can't already, within the next, 12, 24 months, something like that. So I think what that's going to do is going to put more and more requirement on these fundamental traits: curiosity, first principles thinking, empathy. Because if you say, okay, well, everybody's got access to the same knowledge base, the thing that's going to differentiate you is that underpinning capabilities.
I'm wondering, Dave, if that's maybe why we're sort of starting to see this trend of the role kind of AM, CSM almost merging, because people are anticipating that actually that knowledge, that domain-specific knowledge, is just going to become, it's going to become easier in the Google search to get hold of. Right?
Yeah.
So what I need is the commercial nous, the empathy, the other skills that you mentioned there.
Yeah,
And
I think that's part of it, Rav, but I think the main piece that's driving that merging of those two activities is, one is CEOs increasingly saying, why do I need to pay for both? Because I'm actually
CFO.
paying,
Yeah,
because I'm actually
CFOs.
paying a huge amount,
Remember.
paying for a huge amount of overlap. And the second is, I think people are saying, why did we separate these two things out in the first place? Because if you get to the heart of them, if you take CS as having a commercial activity, a commercial element to it, and AM as having a value element to it, all we need to do actually is tweak one or the other, and we've got one role. But the problem is,
I'm not sure I'd agree with that, because if you look at the sales angle, you regularly unbundle multiple roles off a salesperson to make that salesperson successful, right? So you have a commercial person,
yeah,
and then you support them with an SE, for example, or you support them with a BDR or an SDR.
Yeah.
Because trying to get one person to do all of that, even if they could, which is not always the case, it starts to not scale. So I think there's dangers in sort of saying, oh, we can merge it by just making a few tweaks. I think you can merge it into a commercial role if the domain expertise is covered by very comprehensive AI, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I think
what you don't have then,
problem-
Rav, is you don't have teams doing that detailed stuff from a new business perspective, as well as for, to use your words, the next sale, the next sale, the next sale.
The growth phase.
Correct. It's the same structure, it's the same teams, it's the same skill set, it's a fundamental the same processes, although they do need to be adjusted slightly.
But the other thing in the mix is, what if we effectively, in 5 years' time, we stop shipping products? Basically, we don't physically write software anymore. It's basically all a data problem, and the customer has the data, and we just give them the ability to interrogate it, right, with our algorithm, right? So, in which case, a lot of the go-to-market roles will have to change drastically, or will merge, or will disappear, I think. And that's the big unknown, I think.
Yeah, it is a big unknown at the moment.
It feels like we're not kind of far along the journey of this kind of new technology, and I don't want to dive into AI, but the acceleration we've seen, the role changes, it like really it's scarily fast, and I think if there is any resistance at the moment in role, you are going to be left behind like very, very quickly. And same with businesses. And I think something you mentioned earlier that was quite interesting, those without a legacy mindset, the on-premise days, well, this is what we did, like stepping into the world with all this tech at your disposal, like even like developing software now, you can prompt it all. You just type what you want and it builds it for you in seconds. I do think in the next even 6 months, things are going to look very, very different. And I guess from your side, Rav, investing in organizations, you guys must be seeing a quantum leap in terms of what...
Well, I think we're a slight outlier because the premise of the firm when it was founded 10 years ago was data and infrastructure, which we were investing in AI before people called it AI.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for us, it is, it's part of the core thesis of the firm. But yes, I would agree with you that the rapid pace or acceleration that we've seen, more than anything that I've ever seen in my career. But it's interesting that legacy mindset Dave was talking about wasn't that long ago, 2010, 2011, where there was like, no, we're not doing this cloud thing. No one's going to pay a subscription, right? So that was not that long ago. Yeah. So the people didn't want to let go of, now that's the norm. The legacy mindset is thinking about cloud and SaaS, right? So it just goes to show we're still stuck with some very old org design, org thinking, org structure underpinnings. So no matter what else changes in between, we keep that foundational element the same, or we try to. Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, guys. So we're at 48 minutes, which I don't know where that's gone. But there's been some really, really good stuff in there. I do have some like quick fire questions I wanted to get through with you guys as well. So you're happy to jump into that? And I would love to do a part 2 of this because I feel like there's so much more to expand on it if you're happy to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So these quick fire questions are perhaps less, but you have to, whatever comes to mind. So, okay.
3 divided by 8.
2 2/3.
I'll start with you, Dave. What is your
I thought
biggest...
that was my question.
What's your biggest gripe in the industry right now?
The lack of willingness to think about what organisations really are
Okay,
and
great.
how they
Rab?
work.
My biggest gripe is in absolutely squarely in your territory, Lou. It's this nonsense of putting founding before job titles. Founding engineer, founding CSM. Absolute nonsense. That's designed by people ops people in the US who are just desperately trying to get good candidates in a competitive market. You haven't founded anything. You just happen to be the first person there. It's completely disrespectful for the people who are already in the company. And third, and I've seen this is why it's such a problem and a gripe, it creates such a bad expectation around what level of stock compensation you are going to get. That's my biggest gripe. Yeah.
Okay, good. Rab, we'll stay with you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever had in your career?
In my career, you get paid to make the hard decisions and not just the nice ones.
Great. Dave?
The hardest. So repeat the question.
Sorry, Dave, what's the best piece of advice you've received in your career to date?
When it comes to the final thing, it's all about the people.
Awesome. And we'll
Second
stay
best
with
bit of advice was get your expenses in on time. That proved to be really
Yeah.
very, very valuable bit of advice.
keep an eye on your cash is my one.
Yeah.
Dave, you can immediately master one skill. What would it be?
Painting, watercolor painting.
Okay. Interesting.
I've tried it a few times and I still need lots and lots of practice.
I think last time I painted was paint by numbers. Or scratching off. Do you remember the...
Yeah.
Do you remember those? Yeah. That was a long time ago. Rav?
Knowing what my wife is thinking. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to know that, personally.
No, in all seriousness, it would be cabinetry, making cabinets.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Speak to one of Luke's co-recruiters, Paul French. He does a lot of cabinet work.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll remove his name. We're not going to plug another recruiter. I'm joking. Terrible. What's something you wish you'd known 10 years ago?
Oh, wow.
By Bitcoin.
Wow, what's something I wish I'd known 10 years ago? I think I wish I'd known the importance of managing up as well as managing your team. I think I was over-indexed on managing the team. I wasn't managing up, but not enough. And I think I wish I'd known that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Dave, same question to you.
How difficult it is to get people to think differently. I think if I'd worked on that a long, long time ago, I would be much better at doing what I'm trying to do now.
I mean, it's good news for LinkedIn influencers, though, because everyone seems to think the same and appreciate the same content by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's I like to call that algorithmic reinforcement. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. It's a shame, actually. It's what sells, right? It's the same kind of content that gets regurgitated.
Yeah, I find it interesting when occasionally I do post an article. A lot of people DM me go, I didn't want to put this in the comments, but I really agree with it. But I'm like, this is part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It almost becomes somewhat like cult-like. You have your main influencers out there, and you can't be seen to disagree with them. And that's the whole point. Like, if you work in a business and everyone agrees, then, well, unless you're all right.
I think it's because people don't realise those influencers aren't looking for a debate or a discussion or soliciting opinion.
Yeah.
Promotion.
Yeah.
Too many people are chasing the algorithm rather than trying to increase ideas.
Yeah, or share anything of value or move a conversation along or anything like that.
And LinkedIn's got a lot of blame for this. You know, they too are trying to force people to chase the algorithm. I mean, the number of posts I've seen saying, if you do this, you'll beat the algorithm. Well, I'm not bothered about the algorithm.
Yeah.
But they've got commercial incentive, right? That's
Sure.
that's the value they're looking for. So
Yeah.
they want to drive the
Problem
value
is,
of that.
Rav, I think they might be actually destroying their commercial value in what they
Yeah,
do.
I'd agree. There's a lot of backlash to sort of the kind of contents on there now and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree. Again, it all comes back to what it is that you're trying to achieve. The first principle thinking that you are.
So last couple of questions. So Rav, if you had a time machine, okay, so this is quite a deep one.
Wow.
Would you? And you can only have a return trip. Okay, so you can either go forward or backwards.
Yeah.
What point in time would you go to?
Wow, what a question. Well, forwards, I don't know what's coming up in the future. So I think I would probably go back to the Enlightenment era, probably like late 1700s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's deep.
Yeah.
Expand on that.
I think it's kind of pretty much where the modern world that we know started to be created. And I think we don't pay it enough attention. I think it's disproportionately set the both cultural, moral, business framework that we are all kind of used to and grown up in. And I actually just found, I think the period is fascinating. There's big booming of art and culture and music and as well. So
I'm taking a note. I'm going to do my historic research now.
Okay.
Dave.
I do something very similar. I go back to try and spend time with Leonardo da Vinci, one of the best
medieval.
first principle thinkers.
Wow.
1600s.
Yeah. Was it 1600s?
Yeah, it's medieval. 1500s.
Yeah.
14.
1415s, yeah.
Excellent.
Dave's obviously not worried about plague. I'm more worried about plague.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far. Like, you want to take your shot.
We just get burned at the stake, Dave, if we were.
Die in an instant, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Our immune systems today, we'd go back 200 years and we'd step out of the machine and just drop dead, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say get burned at the stake, Rav, it's no coincidence that people do call me a heretic.
Yeah.
I think it's more just when you whop your iPhone out 300 years ago, they might have some questions. Cool. Last question. Who would you say is your biggest career influence, Dave?
My father. He was ex-Navy, ex-mines, a really good engineer that taught me a lot about what it's like to manage people.
Awesome.
Served on HMS Belfast.
Oh, look at that. I've got a weird answer to this, Luke, and I'm not going to name them, but the most influential person in my career has been one of the worst bosses that I ever had because I actually disproportionately learned the most from him. Most about human nature, mostly about how not to manage people, and generally over the years I was like, well, what did he do in this situation? Right, I'm going to just do the complete opposite.
Do that.
And that actually was very influential.
Yeah. I think that's
So in a weird way, it was a great experience. I learned a ton
Yeah.
from a not necessarily good situation.
And I think that's a great sign off and something people can really kind of, take away. The challenges, the things that aren't necessarily comfortable at the time can be your biggest lessons and learnings moving forward. And we're in a period now where I think there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable times. There's a real transition happening. There's an evolution where this conversation may not become redundant, but it may change your viewpoints. Dave,
Get outdated very quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think things are moving so fast now. And that's why I love to get people like you on, because you're living it, you're in it every single day from different perspectives as well. And I've seen, certainly some of your viewpoints on certain things evolve, change, grow. And I think that's really important for people to take away. So love having you guys on. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Luke. Thanks, Dave.
Appreciated the opportunity.